Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Love of Life podcast. Tonight we have a special guest. From Australia. We have Ed Kost with us. He is the creator of Redeem Podcast, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about his podcast and what he's doing. So it's very cool. We've checked it out, and we think you're going to like it.
Christian education, because it serves him who says, I am the way, the truth, and the light, is the love of life.
This is the Love of Life podcast, conversations with Jesse and Courtney.
All right. Yeah. So Ed, thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Or today, as we've already established. It's 11:30 in Australia. And it's
quite the difference.
Quite the difference. Okay, so tell us a little bit about, we've already checked out Redeem Podcast. We've listened to some episodes. Our kids really enjoy it. We really enjoy it. Tell us a little bit about Redeem Podcast.
Well, Redeem Podcast, the summary of it is I create dramatized stories inspired by biblical events. So I create a narrative based around a biblical event, and then I hire actors and they perform the episode, kind of like radio theater. And that's what Redeemed is.
Awesome. About how many episodes do you have total? Do you call them episodes?
I call them episodes, yeah.
Okay.
So they usually run for about an hour, which is quite lengthy. So I have 3 that run the full length, and one mini 10-minute episode, which was a nativity episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
How do you accrue your voice actors? Are they from all around the world? Do you know people in the industry, or what's that?
So I hire freelance actors. So I love the British accent.
Mm-hmm.
So I hire British speaking British accent actors, and they're just freelancers that just do this on the side, and I give them the script and I record. It's difficult because they're in London or someone in Germany. It's difficult to direct when you're so separate. So what I do is I record myself performing each line, and then I give that to them so that they can then understand the annotations and the accents, and that's how we kind of correspond. And because they're so brilliant, that's usually enough for them.
Yeah.
Like they just some of them just do it perfectly in the first take because they're so talented. But it's interesting the way we collaborate. It's a new way of collaborating across borders.
Oh yeah. That's really great that for the actors specifically, that's really great that you perform it for them. As someone who does voice acting, I don't have the British accent, so I'll probably never be able to be on Redeem Podcast. but it's nice for the actor to know exactly what you want in the take. That's
they're very happy about that.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
And some of them actually don't know. All they're given is just their scene and a brief summary of the context. Sure. So for some of them, I've sent them the complete episode, and they've actually noted the complete story they've contributed to, and they've been just surprised by what they are a part of. So it's also nice seeing their surprise when they see, because the actors, they're not in the same studio, so the conversations that happen are recorded separately and then they're put together. Mm-hmm. And it's really nice.
Do you use the same actors for your episodes or different ones? Kind of depends.
I have a couple of actors that are my favorites, like Mary. She was also Rebecca in episode, I think, 2, and Joseph. I've used him a couple of times, and I think the actor for Jesus I used in a couple of episodes. Mm-hmm. But my favorites are the Mary and the Joseph actor. They're just really great to work with.
That's awesome.
That's really good. How long is you're the writer? You're the creator, the producer. You will actually perform the whole thing for all the actors involved and get the actors to do it. I assume also you do sound effects. You do everything. How long is each episode? 45 minutes. I mean, I know from the industry that takes you a little bit of time. How long is that taking you probably per episode?
So because I do this, I have a full-time job, but I do this on the side. Like one full-length episode takes me about 3 to 4 months. Mm-hmm. But my wife is brilliant and she's really great to bounce ideas off. So the nativity episode, which is 10 minutes long, took me only 2 weeks to create because I had her help for that one.
Yes.
So
Women
I'm
do
assuming
make everything easier. That is
they
that is
do
very
definitely.
true.
So I'm assuming like the next full length one I make will take a lot less than 3 to 4 months now that I have her.
Oh yeah. A good woman makes everything easier, right?
Yes, that's right.
Do you know what your next upcoming episodes are going to be about? Or is that a
There's
secret?
one I really want to make. It's about when Stephen gets stoned and he sees the vision of heaven. And that's one I really want to make next. Like I want to maybe create a poll to see what my followers want to hear next, but that's something that's really on my heart. There's that, and also the event in the Old Testament when Elijah calls down fire from heaven. I think that'd be great to create an episode about.
Oh yeah.
But the one I really want to make is the Stephen one.
Awesome.
Yeah, that would be really good. So tell us a little bit more about coming up with the various episodes that are they just stories that are near and dear to your heart, so you're just one at a time? There's nothing cohesive necessarily, because they're various stories, right? There's the leper story, there's the escape to Egypt. So are they just stories for you that you just find important out of the Bible that you're like, ooh, I want to tell this story?
So every episode I create is created through my like theological lens. So I'm Reformed and I'm post-mill, and I actually saw your interview with Nathan Anderson, which I really loved, and like you, Jesse, I am obsessed with that documentary. And
have you seen his latest? Have you seen the latest one?
No, it was
Teach All Nations. You can watch it on Lord TV.
Okay,
for free. Yeah, I'll send you an invite.
Oh, nice. Yes, please.
Oh man.
But there was something that Douglas Wilson said that really like got cemented into my mind. He said that when Christ, before he ascended, he declared his supremacy above everyone, above nations, when he said, all authorities be given to me, therefore go. And then in that documentary, Douglas Wilson says that Jesus is the king of Brazil. He's the king of America. He's the king of Australia. And we need to like accept that and live accordingly. And when I watched that, I was like, this is another like verification personally why I want to create Redeems, is because I want to like do my part to extend Christ's kingdom. And because of my personal lens, I that's kind of what personally drives me to really like push this out. And in the second episode, what is it? The escape to Egypt and then the nativity one. If you listen carefully, you'll kind of note the personal references, especially with the nativity one, with that last scene where Jesus is born and that prophecy from David. So I present everything from that lens, and I'm also Reformed. So it's those two that through those lenses. And I think there's a real gap in the market for Christian entertainment that's like theologically sound. And what I want to do as well to maintain that is I've made a decision to never like add to the words of Jesus, because I know a lot of dramas and series with Jesus as an actor, they add to his narrative, and I don't personally agree with that. I just want to, he just says what he says, and you hear that in episode 2 with Rebecca, as the Bible says, like as it is written in the Bible. So, and I've chosen those episodes like in the first episode when Jesus heals the leper, like that's written because of my understanding of salvation and the irrevocable nature of it. And in episode 3 and 4, that those post-millennial sort of themes come tying them together. So that's how that's the reason why I've chosen those specific episodes so far.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Was it also your post-millennial framework that got you started with the podcast in the first place?
Well, what got me started was when I was younger, I would listen to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I wasn't even that young. I was like early teens, but I would listen to it in my room and kind of like feel like I've escaped from where I was. And that really took me to another place. And I wanted to like give that experience to adults, like not just to children. And so that was, I've always wanted to do something theatrical, and so it was actually that combined with my personal framework that made me decide to do this.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that my mum actually just last week reminded me of a short radio theater my dad created about, because my background is Russian, so my dad created this mini episode about Goldilocks and the Three Bears, but it's in Russian. I'm actually going to post that on my Instagram. It's interesting because he makes all the sounds manually with like pieces of wood to represent the doors opening. And I totally forgot about that. So I must have inherited that from my father, like that drive to create theater.
Yeah. That's great. Was the I'm curious, was the Narnia, was that focused on the family radio theater, or was that just an audiobook that you were listening to?
I think it was an audiobook. It was a CD. It was one of the episodes had the golden rings. I don't know if that rings a bell, but
yeah, there was one that came out, the BBC did back, that I listened to in the 1980s. I remember renting it from the library. It was a cassette at the time.
Yeah.
I'm assuming we're around the same age, and I listened to cassettes growing up, and I remember, that was the one with the rings, and that was really good. That was really good. So when it comes to radio theater, did you grow up listening to other types of radio theater, like either focus on the family radio theater, or back in the 1940s and 50s, CBS in the States, they used to do radio theater, radio hour. I mean, it's an older medium, but I see that it's starting to make a trend back, and it can be done very well.
Well, my parents brought me up to admire like the arts, so my dad would like make us watch ballets and operas and classical music, listen to that. And so that has been my upbringing, and I've been brought up to appreciate that. And so kind of radio theater slides perfectly into, that context, because it's very theatrical and it's very creative. And I didn't listen to that many different, like I would also rent audio books from the library and listen to and hear the ding and turn the page, which is kind of like a radio theater.
Oh yes.
But the closest thing as a kid to an official radio theater would be Salty. I don't know if you listened to that as a kid. The Singing Songbook.
Did you?
It's very weird. It's this character that's like a Bible that's come to life, or the Book of Psalms. So his head is quite frightening now that I think back at what it looks like. So his head is the spine of this some Book of Psalms, and he's got hands sticking out, and it was huge, like in the 90s. And I'll send you a link too. It'll be interesting.
Oh yes, please do.
Just don't share, kids.
Oh my gosh.
So your intended audience is adults. You mentioned that.
Yeah, correct.
That's who you have in mind when you're recording them.
Yeah, that's right. Because I think adults are neglected in terms of like radio theatre. There's a lot made for kids, and I do want to make a branch for kids moving forward. But I think adults just don't have enough content of radio theatre catered to them.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's great. And we did listen with our children, and they all loved it. So even though you're making it for adults, they were engaged, and captivated too. So that's
perfect.
Kind of neat. Yeah, you're hitting more than maybe you're even aiming for. Great, which is great.
That's really good. Tell us a little bit more about how you're creative, because one of the reasons why about this particular endeavor is because your eschatology, right? Like the way you view the world through through being reformed, and also through your view, the view that I think the Bible teaches overtly about the end of all things, is the domination, right, of the Christian worldview. And that really changes everything. So is that something new for you? Was it through Nathan Anderson's documentary? Was it something else in your life that you read or saw that you're like, maybe the world doesn't end in flames of fire, maybe it actually ends in a feast and it's joyous and the world becomes Christianized.
So I was brought up very like dispensational. I would watch the end times movies as a kid. Like, I don't know if you watched ones from the 50s where the Christians would line up and get their heads chopped off. And I was so frightened as a kid, and I was brought up like believing that. And I read one book. I forgot who the author was when I was a teenager, and at the end he presented a personal view, and I ran that by my parents, and my mom was like, "No, that's heresy. That is definitely not happening. Like, we're just all gonna die." So,
oh my gosh.
So, and that view I found just very dampening. It's just like what's the point? Like, I know there are some dispensationalists that aren't as extreme, but I was brought up in the extreme end of the spectrum, and I was thinking a lot of the times, like, what's the point? Everything's just going to get worse. We're just going to just die. And I don't remember. I have a friend, Rob, and he presented me with a personal view which I'd never considered, like, at all. I've never, not in detail at least. And when he did explain it to me, it just started to make sense. And then I, not long after that, discovered some lectures from Apologia, Jeff Durbin describing it. Jeff Durbin and Isaac did a great episode where they discuss. There's a 2-part episode where they discuss all of postmillennialism, and it just like clicked in my head, and I realized that, you know what, like, we need to. And once you grasp that worldview, it makes you just want to go out and do something for Jesus. That's what's so great about it. It doesn't make you just happy and content to just kind of like live your life. You just want to go out there and proclaim the gospel. So that's why I'm very encouraged. Like, I love seeing like Christian podcasts like yours, because you're creating a kingdom building legacy you can then pass on to your kids and can continue to grow, and you're multiplying your reach and taking advantage of, as Marcus Pittman talks about, like the advantages of our technology and how that can be used for Christ's glory. And so all of that combined sort of makes me want to also build something that I can pass on to future generations to keep building until hopefully at the very end when Christ finally comes. And so it plays a big role in everything that I do. Just makes you just so, and when I'm feeling down, I just like revise the personal doctrine and watch videos. It just gets you really like really happy.
Yeah. Well, it really does have such an impact on our view of life. I mean, everyone has an eschatology. The World Economic Forum has an eschatology, and for them, it's temporary victory, very temporary. And for other governments, they even have an eschatology. And with the thing that I find so weird, like in the last 2 years, we've shifted our views have been shifted around quite a bit. And you know, one of the things is post-millennial eschatology for us, and it really has changed how we do, what we think about. It goes from, you know, there's such an eschatology of victory from various governments and people that are godless, that don't know the Lord. And so many Christians sadly have this eschatology of defeat. And if Jesus can just rescue us out of here, if we can just get out of here as soon as possible. And for us, I don't know if we would have defined it as that before we really knew about post-mill stuff. I don't think we would have just said that. And yet in the back of my mind, whenever something terrible would go on in the world, we've seen our fair share of that in the last 2 years, right? It was always making me think, if the Lord could just part the clouds now and just come back today, everything would be better. Everything would be good. And now, and I know we're not, you know, this is not a post-mill episode per se, but I love talking about it. We love talking about it. And we love talking to people who love talking about it. So for us, it's just a sense of wonder and excitement now, knowing that we might not see the complete culmination of all things in this life, but we're part of here to do good works that God has prepared before the foundation of the world. And part of that is loving our wives and our children, being covenant members of our church and our family, creating Redeem podcast, creating this podcast. It's, you know, helping the little old lady across the street, and not just because, oh, that's just a wonderful, nice thing to do, but because we're Christians and we're taking dominion in every area, and it's going to happen. It's very refreshing.
I remember in 2014, I don't know if you remember on the news when in Sydney there was a hostage situation with the terrorists who took hostages in the Lynch Cafe. Do you remember that? So
Yeah.
I was working in the city when that was happening, like a couple of suburbs from the event, and you could hear the sirens. And I was in a high-rise building at the time, and I looked at the window and I could see like all the police gathering. And I remember standing there. It was 2014, and I was praying. I was praying like, God, just get me out of here. Like, this is so bad. Like, I can't. Please come soon, because He needs to just rescue all of us. And I had a similar sort of understanding as you did when that was happening. I was like, that's it. This is the end. Like, I had enough. Get me out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that framework of post-mill gives you such purpose, and you're building something that is going to take a long time. We plan to do our part to build whatever that looks like, and it's different for everybody, what you're talented in or what you have the ability to do. But like, we're just a part of this thing. We're a part of building Christianity, and we're a part of sharing it with our children, and hopefully they'll come along and then they'll build and their children will build. And it's, I don't know, it's so motivating for just the everyday, so motivating for everything that we do, which is awesome. And the things that come out of it, because you think differently. You're like, I want to create radio theater, and I believe that it really can impact people, that they can hear the gospel from this and be changed.
Awesome. Exactly. That's so true. It's very true.
Yeah. So, okay, let's go back to Redeem Podcast. Where can people go to find it? Where can we listen to it? For those that don't know about it right now, and we'll provide a link in our description of this video after it's all edited and everything. But where else can people go right now to find it?
So if you go to redeemedpodcast.org, all the links to the platforms are there. I recommend listening to it on SoundCloud. There's a link there, because that's the highest quality audio, and you can actually hear, it's like you're in the scene, hearing all the horses running, but all the links are there, like Spotify and everything on the website.
Okay. All right. And you like to ride invisible horses.
Yeah.
We did get to see that, and it sounded very real.
That was pretty amazing. I don't know how you did that.
So in episode 3, there's this horse chase that happens, and I put up a video explaining how I made that. And in the video that I put up is actually me riding an invisible horse with sound effects. But that was kind of fun.
Choreographed. I mean, you were like in step with every stop, pause, run.
Well, I had multiple takes, and by the end of it, my quads were killing me because I was just crouching in the video.
I could tell you were out of breath by the end of the video. We'll also include that link so people can see that. Creation of sound effects with Ed Kost. That was a really fun video. Why is it so? We've kind of touched on this a little bit, but tell us. There is so much entertainment out there, right? Most of it not really great. Some of it has huge budgets and it still sucks. Why? Apart from just post-mill eschatology, why else is it important for Christians that are talented, that have the means? So you mentioned Marcus Pittman's name, for instance. We've talked about this before. Why is it important for Christians to sort of go against the grain or just create their own content? Why not let Netflix and Disney Plus and all the others do that and just, watch their mostly garbage?
Because Christians are the only representatives of beauty, the true representatives. The secular world has no standard for beauty, and they're trying to, like, you got pornography now coming under the banner of art when you have 50 Shades of Grey and shows like that. And that's because they have no standard for beauty. They can morph the boundaries and include content like that. But with Christians, we understand the true definition of beauty, and that is Jesus. He's above all things, and in him all things exist. And so because we're representatives of such a standard, in my mind, good is not good enough. Like, we have to aim for great, because we have such I guess a burden to represent such a high standard of beauty. So a lot of Christian entertainment, I believe, doesn't meet all those requirements. Some like there are different types. There are some that are produced quite well and they look quite beautiful, but the theology is garbage. And there are others that the theology is quite good, but it's such cringy Christian comedy or entertainment. And I'm kind of over cringy Christian entertainment. There are movies out there that are quite popular that I've watched in the cinemas and have just been terrible. But they get a lot of like a standing ovation because a lot of Christians say, well, at least they've got some element of the gospel, but that's not good enough. Like you gotta tick all the boxes, high quality entertainment and a high quality theology, and then mix it all together and set a new standard for the world to follow. And there's a video actually Marcus Pittman did, which really inspired me as well to create Redeemed, about talking about the history of the printing press. I don't know if you've seen it, but he's basically saying how the Christian worldview kind of shapes the development of technology. And it's because of the Christian worldview we ended up with the printing press, which got us to basically where we are today, with all of our books, all of the technology. And it's that progression of the gospel that's spearheading that. And Christians should aim, like if you're a Christian and you're talented in writing, you should aim to get your writing out there and do the best that you can and reflect the beauty of Christ. If you're a Christian artist, you should really embrace that and not treat it like a secondary hobby, but like as a privilege of another way to represent Christ's beauty. If you're a Christian, you know how to line dance. You do that to the best of your ability. So it's about representing the true definition of goodness and beauty.
That's so good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, there is a lot of there have been a lot of cringy Christian films produced in the last decade or two, and it is just like you just go, man, I kind of wish that wasn't out there. I mean, I hope there's somebody that got something from it, but at the same time, I don't want it to be, oh, this is the Christian world. This is what this is what they can come up with. We should be coming up with things better than them. Our stuff should be, it should reflect truth, beauty, and goodness. Yeah.
And you should be able to share like a Christian episode from a series or a movie with a non-Christian for them to be impressed. You don't want them to roll their eyes and be like, this is terrible. And that's why I'm liking that like Christian music seems to be improving. There's actually this rapper, I've got his name. He sings a song, The Supremacy of Christ, and he raps I think Colossians chapter 2, and it's quite good. So I'm liking that Christians are beginning to improve their music game, and a lot of non-Christians, when they hear Christian music, they get impressed. But there's still a long way to go in the industry, but the goal is to impress those that don't believe in Christ.
Yeah, we have the most compelling things in the world to say, right? Like we know God's truth that's been revealed in the Bible. So we should be making the best stories, and we actually have something to say. I think that's part of the unfortunate thing about the entertainment industry right now is the world has things to say, and if we're consuming those things, we're being influenced by them. We're being catechized in their worldviews and what they think is good and right and true, instead of what the Bible sets as the ultimate standard. That is the only right standard. So we love what you're doing. We love that you're putting things out there that are reflecting God's truth and that are done well. It's exciting.
And you see that in the new Buzz Lightyear movie. I
didn't watch it. We didn't see it.
I didn't watch it either. I was so excited because I love Buzz Lightyear, but when I heard about it, I was like, I'm not gonna watch it. But
sure,
I'm so glad it tanked.
Yes, exactly. Well, like she said, and I was gonna bring up too, everything is an influence. Every documentary that we watch, every movie that we see, the songs that we listen to. A few months ago, I was holding my phone in my hand and I realized, everything that I see on my phone is an influence on me, for good or for bad. And as you mentioned Doug Wilson's name earlier, like he says, nothing is neutral. There is no neutrality. So when we're watching a TV show that throws a bunch of porn in the show. That's not neutral. That worldview, that understanding does not come from a Christian worldview and understanding. That is of the devil. That's wrong. That's and we are, like Courtney said, we're catechizing ourselves. We're viewing these things and just taking it and saturating it, just complete saturation of our lives, where people, like you say, that are talented, that have the means and the ability, they should be producing quality entertainment, or at least a quality message that is done well.
And because they're not neutral, what they're doing is they're massaging your worldview.
Yep.
So with, say, the Buzz Lightyear, it's subtle, but what they're saying is, this is good, this is great, you should accept that, it's fantastic, let's celebrate it. Because, like Doug says, there's no neutrality. There's an objective behind everything people do.
Yeah. There's a quote that I really like. I'm paraphrasing it, but basically this guy says that you really can't change a person's mind by argument. The only thing that can really change a person's mind is a good story. I don't know if I completely agree with that entirely. I do think there's various arguments that we can have, but what really will get into the psyche of people, what really makes them think, is a good story.
Yeah, that's right. And stories seem to penetrate deeper as well, because and we're all storytellers in some sense. Like when you come home and you saw somebody like steal something from the shops, and then the police were involved, you'd come home and like you tell your family and your wife, and it'd be a bit dramatic telling, and we're all up because they kind of like penetrate deep, and you feel like you're in the moment, and there's this excitement you feel when you know something that others don't know, and then you have the opportunity to share it through story form. And it's an ancient medium that's still as effective today as it was 2,000 years ago.
That's right.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Inklings. I got captivated by like this paragraph in a biography on 4 of them. What's it called?
It's called The Literary Lives of the Inklings, and it covers Tolkien, Charles Williams, Owen Barfield, and C.S. Lewis.
Yeah, and
really
nice.
They talk about how their goal was to capture the imagination for Christian truth through their various, whatever it was, their talents, writing, poetry, music, whatever they were doing in the arts, was to capture the imagination with Christian truth. And I just thought that was so great. And it's almost like our imaginations are kind of this backdoor in to our thinking and how we formulate. It's not somebody just saying, here's the argument, here's what you should believe, and because I tell you so. It's almost like we're getting to discover it on our own, but we're being guided by the person painting the picture. So it's like, it's a sneaky way of making us think in a new way or about something we hadn't considered before. Stories are powerful in that way. And I think part of that is just the way that God made us. I mean, he gave us the greatest story. So there's something compelling in every human heart. When we hear a story, we're moved. We can't help it. Stories are kind of written into our DNA.
And it's also one of the best ways to educate people today about the culture during the Bible time. So every pastor exegetes, what they try to squeeze in like 40 minutes is a quick lesson in the culture of the time, in order for the congregation to understand the context of the passage. And what I find Redeemed is very capable of is immersing listeners in the culture to help them understand, okay, how do people act in those times? How do they respond to this sort of behavior? Like, what were their beliefs? And it's a very immersive, I like to call it, immersive way to understand what the culture was in the Old Testament and during the times of Christ. And it's one of the best ways to educate that.
What kind of research for you goes into making sure you get those aspects correct?
So I do a lot of studies on like exegetes on the passage that I'm covering. So I did some study on the episode about Rebecca when she washes Christ's feet, and I discovered that it's unlikely that it's the same Mary that we read about. So that changed my mind when I read a few studies. But there's a lot of because I have such a high view of scripture. I've taken a lot of time just studying, watching videos, some lectures, and even the 10-minute episode with the nativity in the fourth episode. A lot of research went into like how old was Elizabeth when she gave birth, when she was pregnant, and originally like the line that I recorded was that she was 80 years old, and then after some research, I discovered that we don't really know her age, so I had to get rid of that line. So, so the actress that I chose, I tried to make her sound old but not ancient, so she's the perfect balance. She could be 60, she could be 80, like who knows.
So people can find your podcast. I know they can find it on Spotify. We'll provide a link in the description below. Anything else you want listeners to take away from this interview specifically about Redeem Podcasts? What else should people know? Well,
I'd like the listeners to be inspired to create for the glory of God with whatever it is that they're talented in, and even if they're not talented, just be inspired to just embrace the beauty of Christ, whether it's watching watching or listening to wholesome content, because that's a form of worship as well. And that's what I really want listeners to really be inspired by, like just the beauty of Christ in creative Christians.
Yeah.
Do you have favorite creative Christians? Favorite influence?
He's already named.
Well,
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, I love one of my biggest inspirations is Marcus Bittman, what he's doing, and Nathan Anderson, like he's definitely up there with his documentaries. And I'm definitely going to watch the new one you've mentioned as well.
Yes. Oh yes. Teach All Nations is really good. I really, On Earth as It Is in Heaven. I found that on one night. I was just reading about post-mill stuff. I'm like, I wonder if there's any documentaries on this. And it was on Amazon at the time. I don't know if it still is, but it popped up. Had no idea who Nathan was. And the first few guys that talked, no idea. But then Doug Wilson's face came on, and I've grown up reading Doug, and I know who Doug is. So he came on, like, whoa, Courtney, look, it's Doug Wilson. And yeah, I've probably watched that documentary. I told Nathan this 6 times.
Lot, at least. Yeah.
I don't know.
It's really packed in.
It's packed.
Especially when
you got to watch it many times. Yeah.
There's a lot you miss the first go around.
Yeah.
But his new documentary is actually a series about and it's great too.
Yeah. Good to know.
Yeah, it's really good.
Nice.
Well, Ed, it is a privilege to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on the show to introduce Redeem Podcast.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for the inspirational talk. I feel very, very uplifted after this.
Yeah, very good.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
The angel, the dream, our son, the savior of the world.
Joseph, slow down.
An angel of the Lord told me everything in a dream. He will save people from their sins, and he shall be named Jesus.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to the Love of Life podcast, Conversations with Jesse and Courtney.
It is our duty through our schools to create a new one, a God-centered one. We are told in Proverbs 8, verses 35 and 36, "For whoso findeth me findeth life, and shall obtain favor of the Lord. But he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death."